Hello everybody. We are looking at our lesson for science chapter 3 review. Alright, we're going to go through our pages here and I'm just going to kind of review with you some important pieces and parts. So an ecosystem, we talked about an ecosystem, or you read about an ecosystem. It's the living and non-living things working together. So when we look at over here, we've got the cacti, we've got the rocks. The rocks are non-living, the cactus and the trees are living. You have things that are interacting with each other, and animals that would also be in that picture would be part of that ecosystem. So living and non-living things. It can be very small, an ecosystem, or it can be very large. And non-living parts include air, water, soil, sunlight, climate, and landforms. All those things. You might not think the air is part of an ecosystem, but it is. It shows the sunlight, shows the climate, the temperature, the weather. Okay, so all those things part of this system that works together. On this page here, we looked at all different kinds of ecosystems. We looked at the desert, the grasslands. We looked at the tundra and the forest and the tropical rainforest. Okay, you had a sheet that you filled out that described the different ecosystems, the different specific plants and animals that were in there. Then you went on and you learned about these different things. The population, the community, and the specific roles that organisms have. So let's start with these pictures over here. All right, so the ecosystem, like we said, is all the living and non-living things in an environment. The community. So community, if you notice in this picture, there's some deer, there's some other type of, it looks kind of like maybe a water buffalo or gazelle. You've got an eagle over here. All of those things are different animals. And so a community is, it's all the populations that interact with each other. And the population, if you notice, they're all the same little people or same little animals. Okay, so when you think about a population, if you think about a school, the population would be like our 4th and 5th grade class. That's a population. The community would be all the classes together at the school, and the teachers and the principal, that we're all part of that community. So a population is just one type of animal. The community is all of them put together. All right, and then we have our habitats. Habitats are where the animals live. So, for example, the coyote lives in that, this type of one lives in the desert area. And it looks like all three of these are showing a desert habitat. And those habitats are important because they have to have the things the animals need in order to survive. Now, there's a word over here, a niche. What's the animal's niche? When you look at this Lucifer hummingbird, it has a long tube-like bill to get the nectar from its flowers. That's part of its part of the niche. Okay, it's the adaptations that help determine what the animal's niche is. So like here, a niche includes the type of food the organism eats, how it gets its food, that's that part, and which other species use the organism as food. So it's really relating to that food idea. The niche has to do with something with the food. Okay? A Lucifer's hummingbird eats spiders, small insects, and nectar from plants. So they will have that long bill, like we said, to get the nectar from the flower. A roadrunner that lives in the same habitat as the hummingbird, its niche, though, is to be fast so that it can chase its food, or that it can get away from enemies too, like the coyote. Okay, that's something important too that I know you're going to have to know for your test. You're going to have to know the roadrunner's niche, and you're going to have to know the roadrunner's habitat. So that's really important to remember. Okay, we went on to the flow of the ecosystem. How does energy flow? All energy starts from the sun. It's the main source of life on Earth. Its main energy source is the sun. Without the sun, our ecosystems would not exist. We need that sun. With using photosynthesis, then the plants change. They use chemical energy to stay alive. And we have basically a couple different types of consumers. So consumers are those that eat plants, okay, or eat anything. The consumers are the eaters. The producers are those that make the food. Now, humans are not producers. We don't make our own food. It doesn't happen inside our body and, oh, I'm full. No, we have to actually put things into our mouth and eat it. A plant is a type of producer because they take the sun's energy, they make their own food, and then they eat that food. And we also can eat those plants and get nourishment from that and get the energy of the sun from there too. So consumers, like we said, they're eaters. There's herbivores. Herbivores eat only plants, like herbs, like you talk about. Herbs are types of plants. They eat only plants, herbivores. Carnivore. Carne in Spanish is meat. So when we see carnivore, we can think, oh, that's a meat eater. They eat only animals. So the herbivore eats only plants, the carnivore eats only meat or animals, and the omnivore eats both. And like God is omnipresent, right? All present. Omni means all. So all types of foods. Plant food, meat food, or animal food, and all food. Now we have our scavengers, are the other one. Scavengers feed on dead plants and animals. And scavengers that eat only meat are carnivores. Okay, so they're a specific type of they're a specific type of carnivore, or they're a specific type of herbivore. They're called scavengers. So if we look over here, what we have is we have consumers of the desert. And in the consumers of the desert, we see that we have our herbivores over here. We have our carnivores down here. And then our omnivores are in the middle because they're both herbivores and carnivores. They eat both the meat, or the plants and the meat. So we have the mountain lion that's a carnivore. We've got the turkey vulture that's scavenger. You've got a bunch of herbivores up here. And then these two that will eat both plant and animal. The food chain is the chain of that begins with the sunlight, always begins with the sunlight, and then a producer. So the sunlight, the producer. So we have the sun, and then like here, the producer. The cactus is the producer. Okay, because it gets its energy from the sun. Then the next in the chain is here with this type of pig-like animal, right? And he gets his energy from the plant that he's eating. And he's going to get it from other meat that he eats too, because he's a carnivore. I mean, he is a omnivore. So he eats the plant and gets energy from the plant. Coyotes are predators. We see a coyote over here. He's a predator. He's going to get his energy from eating other animals. So let's say he's going to eat this pig, then he's going to get his energy from the pig. And the pig got the energy from the plant. And that's a chain. That would be a food chain. Okay? So it would be the energy goes from the plant, or the sun to the plant, or producer, we call them. The sun to the producer to the consumer, and then he's a consumer of that pig, and then that would be the chain of command. Okay? Now, that's a food chain. One way. And decomposers, they digest the waste and the remain of dead plants and animals. So decompose, to break down. They break down the cactus. You see, it's the breaking down of the cactus there. Okay, the decomposers break down those things, and they put nutrients and minerals back into the soil. So the nutrients and minerals go back into the soil because of these decomposers. And then that will start the cycle of affecting other animals or other producers in that area. Now, you then read about, let's see, oops, I skipped a page there. There we go. We've got a big food web. A web has all these different lines going different places, and you might look at that and go, what on earth does that mean? Well, okay, so we know that this is the producer. It's where we always start. We always start with the producer. So what it means is when the line goes like this with the arrow to the animal, that means that this is being eaten by this. This is being eaten by this. This is being eaten by this. So when you follow them out, if you look at this quail, the quail is being eaten by the rattlesnake. The quail is being eaten by the roadrunner. The quail is being eaten by the coyote. Okay, and if you look at the end of these webs, this food web over here, there's quite a few animals. Well, the coyote, right? The top dog. He is not eaten by anything in this food web. But the great roadrunner is eaten by the coyote. The snake is eaten by the roadrunner. And same with our mountain lion. Our mountain lion's a pretty safe animal as far as survival, not being eaten by anything on this food web. So the food web can tell us what the producer is and what's the consumers. And if one thing in our ecosystem changes, it's going to affect everything else in the food web. So let's say that the quail is gone. No more quail. Okay? If the quail's gone, then that means that the mountain lion has less food, that the rattlesnake has less food, the roadrunner has less food, the coyote has less food, and the ecosystem will change. The animals, the food web basically will change. The food web's going to change. And it's going to affect all the different organisms. And you're probably everything that the quail would eat. So the quail would eat the cactus. So there's probably going to be more cactus, but there might be less of the other things that eat it. Okay, so remember that with one thing, it can affect the entire ecosystem. How does matter flow in ecosystems? We've got water ecosystems here. The freshwater snail is a consumer in the swamp ecosystem. He eats things. He cleans things up. Think about a fish tank, and you put a snail in there, and what do? They suck off the algae on the sides of the tank. So a freshwater snail is going to be a consumer. And that's another important fact that you'll need to know for your test. Almost 3/4 of our Earth is covered with water, so we have a lot of water habitats. They can't all, not everything can live in the same thing, right? Freshwater fish can't live in saltwater tanks. We're going to have a lot of dead fish if we put them in there. Algae are producers in water ecosystems. Okay, so if he's a consumer, he's going to be eating the algae. The algae is going to be produced, that's going to have that energy in there, and then the freshwater snail is going to eat it. Now when we look at these different ones, these are 4 different ecosystems. You are going to have to know a lot about the swamp ecosystem. So make sure that you read up on your swamp ecosystem as far as different, like I said, like the zooplankton. What's the role of the zooplankton in there? And it gives you that web right here on 92 and 93. So go through and know that web for your test. Okay. Again, it tells you what the animals do. Zooplankton, I think, are so kind of cool. They're tiny organisms that feed on algae. A lot of time, mostly you don't see them because you'll see them under a microscope, and they're really tiny. But if you take a thing of pond water and you look under a microscope, you're going to see little zooplanktons and things like that. Really cool. So anyway, these are just more about your food webs. Decay. Okay, decay in the ecosystem. So we know that everything is going to die and it's going to rot and decay. Well, without decay, they'd pile up and have just a mess all over the place. So there's these things called decomposers. Decomposers, like fungus and bacteria, they break down the dead organisms and they return those minerals into the ecosystem. Decomposers are super important. It depends on the temperature. If it's warm, it happens quickly. If it's cold, it'll slow it down. If there's a lot of moisture, there's going to be more decomposing going on. And then again, it can take a long time to decompose things to decompose, or it can take a short time. It really depends on the item. Right here, green plants take in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. That's what's going on here. And plants use that carbon dioxide from the air, and then they release oxygen into the air. Oxygen is what we need to breathe in, and so that's a good thing. Carbon dioxide is also part of the decay. When they break down tissues of dead organisms, carbon dioxide is released into the air. So as this breaks it down, releases that into the air. Okay. This is a little experiment you can do. Have a damp piece of bread and a dry piece of bread, and you can observe what happens with it. I can tell you that if you have the better type of bread to use is something that is like fresh. If you're taking just loaves of bread from the store, for the most part, it's not going to work as well. But if you have bread from like a bread company, or you make your own bread, that will work much better, because there's too many preservatives and things like that in bread today. But one will have mold on it quicker than the other. All right, and then you went through graphing populations. So on your work for today, you have a worksheet. You're going to write your vocabulary word down correctly on the line. And you have some different questions here that I gave you that are listed here. Oh, classifying each organisms. You'll have a chart on your worksheet. Is it a consumer or is it a producer? If it's a consumer, just put it in that column. If it's a producer, then write that animal in that column. Okay. And then you've got you just write your short answers in that for that ones. Okay. 14 here, in a garden, caterpillars that eat the leaves of plants are eaten by beetles. Okay, so the caterpillars are eaten by the beetles. The caterpillars eat the plants. Caterpillars eat plants, beetles eat caterpillar. What would happen if the population of the plants to the population of the plants if the beetle population decreased? So, not a lot of beetles. What's going to happen to that plant population? Okay? All right, so that's your review, and you have a Kahoot that you can do later this week. Study up on things, and I will talk to you later.